To ask why pork belly is important is a ludicrous question because nobody would ever consider to ask why bacon is important.
We hold true, here in the U.S., the inalienable right to eat what some consider the food of the gods.
I have 90 seconds to tell you why pork belly is awesome. My favorite pork belly recipe is this dish called lu rou fan, which is a Taiwanese national dish. It's Taiwanese comfort food.
We believe pork belly is a truly American dish. We treat it with reverence. Truth be told, pork, in particular the meaty, fatty belly, is loved and used in cuisines all over the world. It is no less American than it is Korean, Philippino, Chinese, Japanese, or Taiwanese.
It's got rice wine and 5-spice and Szechuan peppercorn powder, and it's served with pickled daikon radish and a hard-boiled egg, but it's served all over sticky rice, and it's amazing.
Some argue hogs were domesticated in China around 4900 BC. Romans raised two types of pigs, one with a larger frame known to have lots of lard to render, while a smaller pig was raised primarily for its meat. It is said Queen Isabella insisted Christopher Columbus transport 8 pigs on his journey to Cuba in 1493. They were hardy animals that could survive the trip with minimal care and could provide meat in an emergency. Hernando de Soto brought the first 13 domesticated hogs to the Americas in 1539 when he landed in Tampa Bay, Florida. Within 3 years, his herd had grown to almost 700. Pork production headed north and west as the exploration of the country grew. By the 1800s, Cincinnati, Ohio, was the largest pork-producing city in the world. It earned its nickname, Porkopolis. As pork production grew, methods were used to raise leaner animals and prevent disease. The idea was to produce more offspring at a cheaper rate. This created infinite pork on the market, but at a cost. The cost wasn't financial, it was in taste. Through the mid-1900s and early 2000s, pork became known as the other white meat. It was evident in color, texture, and flavor. In the late 2000s, the trend returned to heritage breeds. The large black, Old Spot, Tamworth, and Osebo, which is a direct descendant of the Spanish Iberico hog. This is where the culinary world steps in.
As an Irish friend of mine once said, he's a butcher, he said, Simon, he goes, it's the sweetest part of the pig. And I think he's absolutely right. It's always one of the cuts of meat I look out for, one of the ones I cook most at home.
Chefs from all over have succumbed to the versatility and sheer awesomeness of pork belly. In the United States, most Americans only know of its processed form, bacon. Believe me, bacon is wonderful, but there is so much more to pork belly than bacon.
Buy it with the skin and the fat still attached. Sometimes you have to go on a bit of a search to do that these days. I score the skin very finely with a very, very sharp knife.
Its skin with a fatty cap that covers a layer of meat can be used in a variety of ways.
And then I make a rub of salt and fennel seeds and black pepper and allspice, which I grind together and rub in. And I leave that for about 2 or 3 hours, and that salt concoction almost cures the skin.
Pork belly lends itself to curing, roasting, sautéing, grilling, and braising.
I then drizzle it with a bit of olive oil, put it in my cast iron skillet on top of a bed of lemons and onions and some sage, and I roast it very high to begin with, about 500 degrees, for about 20 or 30 minutes until that crackling, that skin really begins to pop and bubble, almost like the Mexican chicharron.
When cooked correctly, the belly will give up a lot of its fat to the flesh hidden below, keeping the meat juicy and flavorful.
Then I put some foil over it. I tent it in the foil, and I cook it at about 350 degrees until the inside comes to 140 degrees. And then that's perfect. Make sure to rest it, and then cut it into good, thick slices.
The belly can take on flavors of whatever it is cooked in and still have the distinct flavor of pork. The clips you heard in this episode were called in by Simon Majumdar, author of Fed White and Blue, Finding America with My Fork. You can find his book at Amazon.com or visit his website, simonmajumdar.com. And special thanks to Laura Morrison, a new friend of Food Craftsmen.
I live in Portland, so pork belly is really important. It's almost, if not more important than kale.
Thank you both for sharing your thoughts on pork belly. For all things Food Craftsmen, go to foodcraftsman.com. If you want to know what topics we're talking about this week so you can add to the conversation, follow me on Twitter @foodcraftsman. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Food Craftsman podcast. Remember, food is life, and life is great. See you next time.